You know it's not working. You argue more than you connect. You're mentally exhausted, yet you stay. Why? When you ask yourself if this relationship is good for you now, the answer is no. But when you ask whether to leave, the question suddenly shifts. But what about the 5 years I've already spent? That shift in framing, from present evaluation to past justification, is exactly what psychologists call the sunk cost fallacy. Section 1. Defining the sunk cost fallacy. The sunk cost fallacy is a cognitive bias. It happens when people continue a behavior or decision purely because they've already invested resources into it, even when continuing causes further harm. These investments are sunk costs: time, money, energy, identity, emotions, anything that's already spent and cannot be recovered. Rational decision-making tells us, ignore sunk costs, evaluate based on expected future returns. But the human brain isn't built to do that easily. Section 2. Why the brain struggles. The sunk cost fallacy is a product of 3 powerful psychological mechanisms. 1. Loss aversion. First introduced in prospect theory, loss aversion means that humans feel the pain of losing more intensely than they feel the pleasure of gaining. Walking away from a long relationship feels like losing everything you've already put in, even if the logical cost of staying is higher. 2. Cognitive dissonance. When your current experience, example, this is toxic, conflicts with your past decisions, example, I chose to be here, the brain seeks to resolve the tension. It does so by justifying the past rather than admitting you are wrong. 3. Effort justification. The more effort we put into something, the more valuable we believe it must be. This bias leads us to inflate the worth of relationships or projects simply because they were hard to maintain. Section 3. Why it's dangerous. The sunk cost fallacy distorts logical decision-making. In relationships, it leads to years of emotional stagnation, repeated cycles of the same unresolved conflict, avoidance of better alternatives due to overvaluation of the past, and chronic regret when we eventually realize we stayed too long. The longer we stay, the more investment we accumulate. This deepens the fallacy. It gets harder to leave because we didn't leave sooner. This is called an escalation of commitment, a well-documented cognitive trap. It doesn't just exist in relationships. It shows up in failed startups, degrees people no longer care about, and careers that drain them. Section 4. How to break out. Understanding the sunk cost fallacy is step 1, but breaking out of it requires more than awareness. It requires specific mental tools and behavioral strategies. Let's break down 5 practical, evidence-based ways to regain control. 1. Use the clean slate test. Ask yourself, if I were starting today with everything I know now, would I still choose this? This removes emotional baggage and resets your evaluation to the present forward, not past backward. Psychologists call this temporal reframing, and it's used in cognitive therapy to detach decisions from sunk emotional context. Why it works? Temporal detachment reduces cognitive dissonance and helps neutralize investment bias by making your brain operate from a zero base, a clean evaluation without memory interference. 2. Implement the opportunity cost frame. Every hour, year, or unit of energy you continue to invest in something that isn't working is time not spent on better alternatives. This is called opportunity cost, and it's one of the most ignored variables in irrational persistence. In economics and clinical decision-making, training people to think in terms of foregone alternatives increases rational choices. Why it works? Your brain often overvalues what it owns, endowment effect, and undervalues what it hasn't experienced yet. Highlighting trade-offs forces objective comparison. 3. Use pre-commitment devices, Ulysses contracts. If you're struggling to let go, create a pre-commitment. Write down a clear decision rule. If the situation hasn't improved in 30 days, I will exit. Share it with someone you trust and stick to it. Behavioral economists call this a Ulysses contract, a binding future commitment that protects you from your own irrational bias. Why it works? It reduces reliance on moment-to-moment emotion and instead uses planned reasoning. Studies show people who pre-commit make significantly more rational and values-aligned choices. 4. Run a cost-benefit table in writing. Use a simple table. In one column, write the future emotional, social, financial, and psychological costs of staying. In the other, write the realistic gains if things stay as they are. Avoid listing past effort. This is a forward-only analysis. Why it works? Writing improves clarity, reduces emotional distortion, and activates the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for executive function and rational planning. 5. Replace hope with measurable evidence. One of the biggest reasons people stay stuck is hope without metrics, the vague belief that things might improve. Replace that with a rule. What specific improvement have I seen in the past 3 months? If none, the hope is emotional, not evidence-based. This method, called empirical disconfirmation, is used in CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, to test whether beliefs hold up under observation. Why it works? Our brains rely heavily on narrative bias, stories we tell ourselves. Data overrides narrative. Reality checks reduce irrational optimism. Section 5. Scientific studies on sunk costs in relationships. These studies conclude that individuals are more likely to persist in unfulfilling relationships or decisions due to prior investments, even when those choices no longer serve their well-being or goals. The sunk cost fallacy is not just a flaw. It's a byproduct of a brain designed to protect us from waste, but it ends up amplifying it. If your relationship, or any commitment, no longer serves your values, mental health, or goals, then the fact that it once did is not enough reason to stay.